Okay, let's unpack this. We are traveling back to a sunny morning, September 16th, 1994, in Ruwa, Zimbabwe.
Right. The setting is the Ariel School.
It's mid-morning break, and you've got 62 children, ranging from first grade all the way up to age 12, playing outside.
And this is the key detail. Every single teacher, every adult is inside for a staff meeting.
Completely unsupervised. And for the next, 10 to 15 minutes, these 62 kids allegedly witnessed, what remains perhaps the most cohesive, compelling, and just utterly bizarre mass UFO encounter ever recorded.
That's a perfect way to put it. Our mission today is a deep dive into the Ariel School incident. We're using sources from that 2022 documentary, Ariel Phenomenon.
Which has all the original footage from '94, plus new interviews with the witnesses who are now adults.
Exactly. And we're going to try and hold two sort of conflicting narratives at the same time. On one hand, you have the stunning consistency of the children's claims, and on the other,
the very powerful, critical, socio-psychological explanations that try to make sense of it all.
it's a classic case. Either it's proof of something extraordinary, or it's a perfect storm of factors that created a mass delusion.
So let's set the scene a bit more. Ariel School wasn't just some local public school.
No, not at all. It was an expensive private institution. These kids came from wealthy, well-educated families, mostly from around the capital, Harare.
But before they saw anything strange at the school itself, the sky had already delivered a pretty big precursor event.
Oh, it absolutely had.
Yeah.
You have to remember the psychological landscape was already primed, 2 days before. Southern Africa was just engulfed in what we call UFO mania.
Because of that massive fireball, right?
A massive, brilliant fireball scene streaking across the sky. Zambia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, everyone saw it.
And the local media, ZBC Radio, was all over it.
They were. Now, that object was later identified pretty definitively as the re-entry of a Zenit 2 booster rocket.
From a satellite launch.
Yeah, Cosmos 2290. But, the damage was done. When you have local radio talking about unidentified flying objects, you've given an entire region, including 62 kids, the exact vocabulary they might need to interpret the next weird thing they see.
Which brings us to September 16th. For the children, it didn't even start with seeing something. It started with a sound.
Which is so disorienting. There were two distinct and frankly terrifying sounds. First, this strong, high-pitched flute noise.
Like right above their heads.
Right above their heads, which made them all look up. And then as the craft came down, a totally separate mechanical bee noise or humming.
That's a strange combination, a musical sound and a mechanical drone.
Very unusual. And then they saw it, or them. They described one, maybe more, silver, disc-shaped crafts coming down fast and landing in a field just past the school fence.
And the location itself it's kind of fascinating.
It is. Local indigenous leaders later pointed out that that exact spot near a rocky outcrop was a traditional shrine of one of the first kings of Zimbabwe.
Coincidence? Or was it chosen? Who knows?
Exactly. It just adds another layer of high strangeness to the whole thing.
So the craft is on the ground, and then the entities emerge.
And this is where the descriptions become just terrifyingly consistent across all the age groups.
What was the consensus?
Okay, so between 1 and 4 figures. Short, only about 1 meter tall, and incredibly thin, wearing these skin-tight, shiny black outfits.
In faces?
Pale skin, big bulbous heads, and the most memorable feature, these huge, dark, almond-shaped eyes. Just huge eyes and a tiny little slit for a mouth.
I'm always struck by the specific kind of grounding details kids give in stories like this. Someone mentioned hair, didn't they?
Yes. One student said a figure had long black hair, and this is such a 1994 detail hair, like Michael Jackson's.
Of course.
And it's such a key detail, right? It anchors the description and their reality. It feels less like they're just pulling a stock image of an alien.
But if they were just, children seeing a strange person, that's one thing. What really pushes this story into the anomalous is the way these things moved.
The movement. It consistently defied physics, as we understand it. Multiple kids described them moving in this jerky, slow-motion way, like someone walking on the moon.
They called it bouncy.
Bouncy. It wasn't natural running, and then there was the glitching.
The glitching, I mean, that sounds too fantastic to be real. If we just for a second throw out the alien idea, what mundane thing could possibly make it look like someone is disappearing and reappearing?
That is the million-dollar question. If you want a normal explanation, that glitching is the hardest part to explain away. Several students describe seeing a being run, then just vanish.
Yeah.
And reappear several meters away.
Or even back where it started.
Yes. Repeating this almost teleportation-like movement. To the kids, it was deeply, deeply frightening.
I can imagine. So that's when a lot of the younger kids ran and hid, but the older ones, the braver ones, they stayed. And that's when the communication happened.
Purely telepathic. The students who stayed claimed it happened when they looked right into those big black eyes. They called it a locking of minds.
Not a voice in their heads.
No, direct transfer of images and concepts.
Yeah.
Really powerful stuff.
And the message itself was, I mean, for a bunch of different kids to get the same message is incredible. It was a chilling environmental warning.
Decades before climate change was a dinner table conversation, it was strikingly consistent. The core message was an urgent, almost apocalyptic warning about the damage we're doing to the planet.
They mentioned specifics, right?
They did. Pollution and the danger of becoming, and this is a quote, too technologed. An 11-year-old girl told Dr. John Mack that the message was humans are making harm on this world.
And some of them had these visions.
Devastating visions.
Uh-huh.
The imagery was intense. One student got a vision where, quote, all the trees would just go down, the air would disappear, and humanity would just die. Mass death from ecological collapse.
What's also fascinating is how the different kids filtered this experience through their own cultures.
That's a key detail. The kids from more westernized backgrounds, they immediately said aliens. But many of the local Shona and Dendeville students, they interpreted these small, dark figures through their own folklore. They called them Tikaloshes or Zikwambo.
Which are, what? Evil goblins.
Basically, yeah. Malevolent spirits, short, dark figures. The fact that two totally different cultural frameworks produce the exact same physical description, short, dark, big head, suggests they were all seeing the same physical thing, whatever it was.
So the moment the kids run inside, terrified, the story shifts. It becomes one of institutional resistance. Let's talk about the first investigator, Cynthia Hind.
Right, a local UFO researcher. She's one of the first adults to actually take them seriously. She got there 4 days later and immediately had them all draw what they saw.
And the drawings showed this uncanny similarity.
Uncanny. The big heads, slender necks, the eyes, the craft shape. It's all there.
But her methods were criticized pretty quickly.
They were. Skeptics pointed out that she interviewed them in groups of 4 to 6. And, the argument is that this could lead to narrative cross-contamination. One kid says something and suddenly it's part of everyone's memory.
Then the big guns arrive. Tim Leach, a BBC correspondent, a seasoned war reporter.
And his story it broke him. In a way, he was reportedly totally unnerved by how sincere the children were. He famously said he could handle war zones, but I could not handle this.
They went looking for outside proof.
He did, and he found it. Reportedly gathered 40 non-student corroborating sources.
40. That's an incredible number.
It is. Local farmers, people in the town who saw the craft land. But the most important piece was from commercial pilots and air traffic controllers at the airport. They supposedly saw the oval craft on radar.
So he had his story. He met the BBC's requirement of 3 solid sources.
He thought so. But the BBC suppressed it. And Leach was reportedly fired for pushing it so hard.
Why? Why suppress a story with radar confirmation?
The stigma. It's that simple. Leach was pushing a story that challenged reality, and his editors just weren't willing to risk the BBC's reputation on something so fringe.
Even with the data.
Even with the data. It just shows you how institutions handle things that don't fit the mold. They prioritize skepticism over evidence.
Which brings us to the biggest academic name to look at the case. Dr. John Mack, Harvard professor, Pulitzer Prize winner. He flies out in November '94.
And his presence just legitimized the whole thing. He did extensive one-on-one clinical interviews, no group contamination. He was looking for signs of delusion, fabrication, hysteria.
And his professional conclusion.
Unequivocal. He said the children were not suffering from mass hysteria. He found them lucid, consistent, and genuinely recounting an experience he believed happened in physical reality.
But Mack was already in hot water at Harvard for his work on abduction claims.
Oh, yeah. This was the straw that almost broke his career. Harvard had already launched an investigation into his work. When he validated the Ariel claims, his colleagues basically put him on trial. The problem wasn't his methods, it was his conclusions. He was demanding a shift in reality, not just diagnosing a new syndrome.
Okay, so let's give the counter-narratives their due. The big one is mass hysteria.
And it's a compelling argument. I mean, the environment was perfect for it. You had the UFO mania from the rocket. You had 62 kids with big imaginations left totally unsupervised.
So the theory is they just misinterpreted something mundane. A dust devil, a bird.
And their shared fear and imagination just amplified it into this collective hallucination, borrowing details from the news and local folklore. It's plausible.
Then there's the Dallin confession, the claim that one kid started it all as a prank.
This is a recent thing. From a 2023 documentary, Dallin, a former student, claimed he just pointed at a shiny rock and called it a UFO, and it spiraled.
But that story has holes in it.
Big holes. It completely contradicts his own testimony from 15 years earlier, where he describes specific lights and complex movements. And the other witnesses just dismiss it. They say, no, we saw figures, we saw movement, not a rock.
Okay, the third, and maybe the most specific skeptical theory, the puppet hypothesis.
This is where it gets really interesting if you're looking for a real-world answer. An independent researcher proposed the kids misidentified mobilization puppets.
Used by a group called AREPP?
Exactly. The African Research and Educational Puppetry Program. They toured rural Zimbabwe to teach about things like AIDS and health.
So how do puppets match the description of aliens?
Bizarrely, well, in some ways, the puppets had these huge, oversized papier-mâché heads and stiff necks.
Yeah.
And crucially, the puppeteers would run in a high-stepping, exaggerated, and bouncy way to attract a crowd.
That bouncy movement, that matches the moonwalk description perfectly.
It really does. Now, the puppets were taller than what the kids described, but you're talking about children aged 6 to 12 seeing this at a distance, across a field. A large, running, bouncy puppet with a huge, expressionless head. You can see how a terrified kid might misinterpret that.
Even the vans they used for transport could have been the craft.
It offers a single, non-alien explanation for the most specific details. The head, the movement, and the fear it caused.
But whether it was aliens or puppets, the fact that these witnesses are so consistent 30 years later, that's what gives this story its real power.
Absolutely. The adults today, they are scattered all over the world, and they all maintain the exact same details. The glitching, the eyes, the flute sound, the message. The core story hasn't changed at all.
But it's come at a huge personal cost for them.
The psychological burden is immense. So many of them talk about a lifetime of fearing ridicule. We know one woman hadn't even told her own husband about it until a few years ago.
And one witness, Emily Trim, she channels it into her art.
Yes, she paints the intense images she received. It's almost like a form of therapy, which just shows how much trauma this experience inflicted.
And now finally the context is shifting. The U.S. government is confirming UAPs are real. It sort of retroactively validates what these kids went through.
It completely shifts the burden, right? The question isn't really if they saw something anymore. They clearly saw something that traumatized them. The burden is now on us to figure out what that something was.
So to sum this all up, the Ariel incident leaves us at this profound philosophical crossroads.
It does. On one side, you have dozens of consistent testimonies, radar data, a Harvard professor's endorsement. On the other, you have these compelling rational explanations like mass hysteria or the puppet hypothesis.
And you have to live in that tension.
You have to. The power of their testimony is undeniable, and the way they were dismissed caused real trauma. But the strength of the skeptical case, that a shared story could line up so perfectly with a strange stimulus, you can't ignore that either.
So here's something to take away from this dive. These children got a chilling, apocalyptic message about the planet pollution being too technologized 30 years ago. Now, whether you believe they saw aliens or puppets or had some kind of elaborate psychological event, just consider this. What does it say about the adult world that a message of universal ecological warning, however it was delivered, was immediately dismissed, ridiculed, and suppressed? What profound, maybe necessary knowledge are we choosing to live in the not knowing about just because of who the messenger was?